I had to get my hands on this iPhone 14 Pro ASAP, and that I did. Let's get this thing open. We all have seen what the inside of an iPhone box looks like, so I'll be quick. Plus, I have to get to the airport. I have a flight to catch. I spent the weekend in San Francisco, and I personally can't review a phone or have thoughts on it in such a short span of time to have a real genuine opinion or thought on it. That's why I took the entire weekend to implement this phone into my everyday life, and now I can give you my first impressions. Plus, this montage was completely shot on my new iPhone 14 Pro with its camera. This is my iPhone 14 Pro Max review after 1 week. Make sure you subscribe to my channel to see more content on both the iPhone 14 and the new AirPods Pro 2nd generation. All right, as you see, I'm back in Seattle now, and yes, I have my iPhone 14 Pro Max. I went with the Pro Max, 6.7-inch screen. I went with the space black. It was between the deep purple and the space black, but black felt safer. And I went with the 512 gigabyte option. You have the option of 128 gigs and up to a terabyte. But I know with the camera in this thing and the fact that you can shoot ProRes and RAW, which I'll talk about later, I needed a good amount of storage because those things take up a good amount of space. So with the iPhone 14 and the iPhone 14 Pro, you have a lot more options on the Pro level devices. You have a new chip in the A16, you have a better display, better battery life, you have new UI with the dynamic island, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and then you have the new cameras, which again I will talk about later on in this video. So Apple gives you a decision you have to make between the 14 and the Pro, and there's quite a big jump, more than we've seen in the past. So there's 4 things I want to talk about in this video. I want to talk about the display, the cameras, the new features, and finally the battery. So let's hop into the display. With this iPhone, this Pro, you do get your 120 Hz ProMotion display, which we all know and we love. The Pro level models have it, and if you know phones, you know something about phones, and you've had a Pro in the past or an iPad Pro, you know how important that 120 Hz ProMotion display is. And then the next thing is an updated brightness. This thing gets to 2000 nits of brightness, which in the past I've had problems with my iPhone in the outdoors, in the peak of sunlight, and not being able to really see what I'm doing. But with the 2000 nits in the high noon of day, you get quite a bit of light from your phone and you can really see what you're doing, and it's a little upgrade that makes a big difference in your everyday life. And then next up, this stole the show at the Far Out Apple event, the dynamic island. So what was rumored was the hole punch cutout. With that, we had Face ID on one side and the camera on the other, and it made this hole punch cutout. And what a lot of brands are doing, they're trying to eliminate these cameras and these Face IDs and these touch sensors within the phone with pixels and have them under the screen. And as we've learned, it's a hard thing to do and it's a hard thing to simulate. And what Apple did was they took UI and they took software and they made something that a lot of companies want you to ignore and make you want to look at it with the dynamic island. And what this dynamic island is it's a UI that is really touch sensitive to everything you do. It's something you want to look at. It's user friendly, and it does things like pause and play music from this dynamic island. Face ID pops down from it. You can pay for things from it. Your silencers from it. When you plug in your phone, your battery indicators from it. And what it really acts as is a multitasking tool. And what I mean by that is the fact that you can play your music, get out of it, go set a timer, and right on the right of it, a timer will pop out. And then you can go get your maps and navigate somewhere. Your navigates will take over where your music was. It's just those little things that Apple does where they take something that everyone's trying to get rid of and they bring your attention to it. And with this, it has me thinking. It has me thinking that down the road, 4 years from now, we were gonna see an iPhone that didn't have a camera cutout, didn't have a hole punch, and what we see is the fact that they're really putting their time into this UI of the dynamic island, and this is probably gonna be around for a couple to 4 more years. I think this is gonna be around for a while, and it can only get better over time. This looks like the first generation of it. It only works with the Apple built-in apps, and down the road, it's gonna work with a lot more, and it's gonna get a lot better over time. It's really cool what they've done with this dynamic island, and until you get your hands on it, until you play with it, you really notice how user-friendly it is and how it really takes the differences from the 13 Pro and the 14 Pro and makes it feel like really a new, updated, next generation of a phone and a Pro model phone at that. And lastly, I want to talk about always on display. So always on display has been something that's been on phones for years. It's something that's not new. It's something that Apple took the time to perfect, and they finally brought it to the iPhone 14 Pro. I had mixed feelings about it. I liked the idea of it and I liked using it at first, but once I started using my phone, and I was at a wedding this past weekend, when I put it aside on the table, the only way I could really benefit from not looking at my phone was putting it down and not being able to see the screen, because it just looks like it's dim. What I would like to see is the background become a lot more transparent and a lot darker, and what you really see is the time, the date, and maybe a notification or two, and that's it. But you really can see the entire screen, so it's really hard to justify this always on display, and I have mixed feelings about it. I don't know if I really like it or not, but so far I'm not the biggest fan of it. I think it has some improvements to do, and I think it should go from the Apple way of trying to do something completely new and go to kind of a way that a lot of other people are doing it, where the screen really dims down, and yes, it goes to 1 Hertz now, but really get it down, really bring that background down, and make sure it's just in the corner of your eye you can see what's going on, and not something that's really always on in your face, pun intended. So the camera. Let's talk about these. So every year the iPhones come out, for the longest time, they've spent more and more time on the camera and making it better and improving it from the photo side to the video side. And this year's no different, and this year's really the year they really did something special. So with the ultra wide, we still have a 12 megapixel camera. With the telephoto, we still have a 12 megapixel, but up to 3 times zoom now. And with the normal camera, we have, finally, the day has come, a 48 megapixel camera. And with a 48 megapixel camera, you're able to turn it into RAW and shoot RAW photos, which just gives you so much more information. And not just with the coloring of it, which is a big benefit of being able to shoot RAW, but zooming in, cropping, you get a lot more detail in your photo, and it is really noticeable. I went to town with it this weekend in San Francisco, and I had so much fun taking pictures, more fun than I've ever had taking pictures with an iPhone, just because of the information. And you get the photo, and you can drop it into Lightroom, and you can really customize it and do what you want with it, because you have so much more information with the camera. And they updated the front camera too. We finally have autofocus with the front camera. This is a front camera test. You can see the new autofocus on this thing. You can see a little bit of a blur in the background, and you can just see the camera's upgraded, all the colors and everything. It's a lot sharper, but that's what it is. This is an example of it. Little change, little addition, but you see the little bit of bokeh behind you. It's a little bit better of an image just because of that. And I'm a video guy at heart, and we have action mode. I've used a ton of videos where I throw my Fuji on a Ronin and walk around just to get stable footage. With this iPhone 14 Pro, you can go into action mode, and at 2.8K, you have a stabilized video. And at first, I was iffy about it. I didn't know how it was gonna work. I thought it was gonna be like a GoPro where it just warps it and you see the warps. Okay, other cameras have it, but this is really special. I was able to run across a dock with the camera shaking all over the place and really saw how still it is. In a pinch, I can just take out my phone and have a stabilizer just like that. Why not? And especially these upgraded cameras, it's just a great thing to be able to have, and I was real happy with this addition. And this was in the phone last year, but ProRes. This is my first time shooting ProRes on a phone, and I'm really impressed with how it looks. I've always not been a fan of shooting on a phone, and simply because I'm so used to these high-end cameras, but I can pull out of my pocket, get the shot when I don't have this with me, and make it work in a video with the ProRes video. It's really something that is special, and I used that a ton this weekend, shooting ProRes, shooting RAW, shooting cinematic mode, and shooting slow motion. I was just having a field day shooting with just this iPhone in my pocket, and it made It made shooting something more motivational because you could just pull out your phone and shoot when you saw things. If it was a photo, if it was a picture, if you had to walk and get jittery stuff, it became stabilized. So that's it. That's it on the cameras. The next thing I want to talk about is the new features for 2022. The big new feature is the A16 chip. The iPhone 14 got the A15, which the iPhone 13 had, but with the iPhone 14 Pro, we have the A16 chip. We have eSIM, and what eSIM is the fact that you don't have a physical SIM card anymore in the US. You have this eSIM. And what's interesting is phones that ship in the US don't have a SIM card holder, but phones that ship outside the US have a SIM card holder. And what's gonna be interesting is if you're from the US and you're traveling overseas or whatever, and you need a SIM card, it's gonna be interesting how that works and how that transfer works now that you can't just throw a SIM card in. And it gives you an idea. Next year, USB-C is gonna be mandatory in a lot of different countries. And the fact that they did it this way, shipping different phones in different countries, it makes you think, are we gonna have Lightning next year while the rest of the world has USB-C? It's yet to see, but this could be an idea of how that's gonna play out. And the last two is the far out event, satellite connectivity. You can now point your phone up if you don't have service and it'll follow the satellites to let you make emergency calls. I hope I'm never in that situation. I hope you're never in that situation, but it should give you some peace of mind knowing that if you need emergency services in your time of need and you don't have reception, you can get that. And with the new gyroscopes in this phone, it has car crash detection. And what that is you can have a phone in your car, and if you get in a car crash, it'll automatically call 911 services and get you the help you need if you can't get to your phone. And even if you get to your phone, it's not that bad and you don't need 911 or you wanna make the call, you can cancel out of it. So those are two new things that are really beneficial into helping save your life with car crash detection and satellite connectivity. And finally, the battery. I had an iPhone 12 as my work phone and the battery is good, it's okay. I had an iPhone 10 as my personal before this and an XS Max and the battery was absolutely terrible. And I've heard the battery on the Pro Maxes, especially the 13 Pro Max, is just tremendous. And I was kind of shocked. I was kind of shocked because the first day I really used this phone with the battery, I went from 0% to 100%. You can see on this graph really how long it took me and then a charge back up to 100. And it didn't last that long. And I was doing a lot of stuff like taking video, taking notes, texting, emailing, doing all the stuff I normally do. So my final thoughts. I'm real happy with this iPhone 14 Pro. I'm real happy with it. I'm happy that I was able to get it. I'm happy with the features that it came out with. I'm real excited about the dynamic island. But the question is should you upgrade? And if you have a 13 Pro and you're upgrading to a 14 Pro, it's not really an upgrade. They give you just enough things you can count on your finger where it feels like an upgrade. I mean, the dynamic island makes it feel like a new phone, but it doesn't give you enough reason to really upgrade unless you're like a techie and you notice these little things like a better camera, a dynamic island. If you're dying for those things, upgrade, it's well worth it. But if you don't want those things, you don't need those things, it's not really an upgrade. So that's my review on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I answered any questions you might have, any decisions on upgrading you might have, and leave a comment down below. I can answer anything you want. So with that, make sure you hit that like button, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I got many more videos on the iPhone 14 coming out in the near future. So as always, until the next one, thanks guys.